Hi, welcome to today's video and thanks for joining me. Today we're going to be talking about a subject that's actually very sad and very tragic. You may have seen this similar headline in the news. And today I'm going to be talking about what happened to this family and why they had to pay $700,000 to CRA at their passing. It's not only just tragic in terms of losing two parents, but also the amount of money. And that seems to me like it could have been avoidable. So through this tragedy, I'm hoping that we're going to be able to learn something here so that this can be avoided for you in your life. So let me explain what's happened. I'm not going to use the names. They've had enough coverage of this. I don't want them to relive that experience over and over again. This is a couple that died about, I think it was about a year ago. And the wife was 62, husband was 60. And the wife dies in the spring, I think it was April. And all of her assets obviously goes to the spouse. That's part of the rules around RRSPs and TFSAs, is that if you have a spouse, whether it's through marriage or common law, those assets can be transferred to your surviving spouse, your husband in this case, and there's no taxation. And so that occurred. And then he passes away in December of the same year. Absolute tragedy. 62 and 60. It's unheard of. It's a rare thing. We see this in older ages where two people can't live without each other. They've been married for 65 years and they're like, can't live without you, and they both pass within months of each other. In this case, very young, 62 and 60, had the whole life in front of them, all the experiences. It's what hit me most. What caught my attention was the $700,000. Of course, it's like, how? Why did that happen? And then I understood why. But what also hit me most is because I'm doing a lot of planning for clients and I'm talking with you all the time about what you're going to be doing in the next chapter of your life and all the plans you're making and what we're putting into your plan to make all those things happen so it can be successful. And then at such a young age, that's cut off. It's such a tragedy, and it hit me very hard, and I thought to make a video about it. But so now let's move forward to the husband has just passed and the two adult children are shocked that the tax bill is $700,000 going to CRA. Anybody would be shocked about that, but they thought it wasn't going to happen. So let me dig into why they thought that was. Okay, so their daughter was shocked that she was forced to sell her late parents' retirement accounts in order to pay the tax bill. So that's the first misconception, and this is why I have this channel. And other advisors have these channels, is to give the education so you know exactly how the kind of investment products you're invested in, how they work throughout your life and when you pass away, as it relates to the way you can do withdrawals and taxation and so on, and how you pass it on to your beneficiaries. This is why we do these videos, is so that you can learn this. So let's talk about the misunderstandings of RSPs. So when you have an RSP, it's considered a tax-deferred account. So an RSP, a RIF, a LIRA, a LIF. These are tax-deferred, meaning when you have a rate of return and you make money in those accounts, you don't pay tax on all that money. You only pay tax on the money that you withdraw. So that's why they call it tax-deferred. Different from a tax-free savings account. When you earn money in a tax-free savings account, you don't pay any income tax on that. And when you take money out of the tax-free savings account, you don't pay any income tax on that. So an RSP is a tax-deferred account, meaning the government is going to get their taxes. It just depends on how you do the withdrawals. How much they get could be diminished by the way you withdraw it. In this case, it all came out at the same time. So it's the worst possible situation. They're fully taxable at your death. So when this husband passes away, his account was $717,000, I think it was in the news. That means like almost half of that account is going to go to CRA. If you take $700,000 and just add it to your income in that year, your tax rate's going to be north of 50%. That's exactly what's happening in this example. So about half of that tax bill is coming from the income tax being attributed to the RSP that had to be cashed in. So when she says about being forced to sell, everybody is forced to sell. If you have money in an RSP, it's what happens in an estate account. That money has to be sold for cash, then reported to CRA, and you pay the tax. It's just the way those accounts work. Now, she mentioned something about naming herself and her brother as beneficiaries, and she was shocked that she still had to pay the tax. So let's clear that up about naming a beneficiary. When you name a beneficiary on an RRSP account or a LIRA or a LIF, that doesn't alleviate you from not paying tax to CRA. All it does is two things. It avoids probate in Ontario, so that's 1.5%, and it instructs the financial institution and the executor where the money is supposed to go at your passing. That's the two provisions there. There's other things we don't even have to get into and so on, but it's really like creditor protection and so on. But the two main reasons here is avoid probate and to give instructions to the beneficiary or to the executor and to the financial institution, where are we supposed to send the check? That's really what that's for. CRA is still getting paid. So what can you do about this to make sure it doesn't happen to you? So as I just said, CRA is getting paid. Bottom line, CRA is going to get their money. So the first way that you can mitigate this is you start doing withdrawals as soon as possible in your retirement. Doesn't matter if you're 57 years of age, start doing withdrawals in your turn it into RIF or start withdrawals, but start depleting that account, because leaving it behind at an early age and passing, like in this example, is really a bad tax situation. Now, in fairness, he was 60 when he died, so he really didn't get a lot of time to be able to melt down his RSP. So in that case, that really wouldn't have helped him all that much. The other thing about what to do with the money when you do a meltdown is you put whatever you're not spending, put it in your tax-free savings account. When that becomes full, put it into your non-registered account. So, or give it away to your kids. At least if you have enough money to live and the accesses that you have that you're really not going to spend in your lifetime, start giving it away so you don't have the tax associated with all that money. Now, the other thing that I'm going to show you is how insurance might have helped this couple. Now, my understanding is they did have a small life insurance policy, about $40,000, but they could have, if I don't know what their health was like. Sadly, they died pretty early, so maybe they didn't have good health at the time, but I'm going to show you how insurance may help you in this situation. The other way was about a cottage. So the second part of this tax bill came from a cottage. They had designated their cottage as their primary residence. Smart thing to do, but it sounds like when they did it might have been the reason why they have a high tax bill, because there's still a capital gain that is on the cottage because it wasn't always their primary residence. So there's a period of time where it was just a recreational property, so there's some tax that has to be attributed to that. But you can see here that one of the things they could do is a freeze. So when you freeze an asset and you put that asset in the hands of, let's say, of your beneficiaries, then the tax will be attributed to them from that day forward, so that when you pass away, all that tax is not going to be part of your estate. It's just the period before you do the freeze. Now, the trouble with this is really about the timing of how old your kids are when you're doing this. If they're 60 and their kids are going to be like 35 maybe years of age, right? Maybe 30, like depending on when you have your kids. So is a 25-year-old prepared to be able to take ownership of a cottage? Probably not. So it's something that you have to be having these conversations with an advisor when you're doing planning, having conversations with your adult children about, do we want to keep this cottage? Now, what I always share with my clients when they have rental properties or a cottage or a place in Florida, that kind of thing, is to examine the usefulness of that property. Is there a likelihood that you're going to want to keep that after age 71? And the reason why 71 is because you can make an RSP contribution, if you have room, towards the capital gain that you're going to be having as a result of selling that property. So make a decision to sell the property before age 71. And if you have RSP room, so there's some things to think of before this, then you can lower your tax bill by making the RSP contributions. If that is not the case and you're going to retain the cottage after age 71, now you have to have a plan to deal with the capital gain that you're passing, because it's going to be quite sizable given the fact that they bought this cottage, I think it was 1990 95 or something like that. It was a long time ago. So there's going to be a lot of tax on the cottage. You have to have some kind of plan to deal with the cottage. And I'm going to share with you a couple of those things. The second part is they could have donated some of the RRSP, let's say stocks, to charity, and they would have got a tax credit to the estate. So as an example, let's say if they deposited or made a charitable contribution of, say, $200,000 in stock, they would have received about $100,000 tax credit for the estate to deal with the tax issue that they had. That would have been one of the ways that they could have lowered the tax bill. Now, one way that you can, this last part here is really about for you people who have recently been widowed. You need to get on track of doing RRSP withdrawals. I've done like literally hundreds and hundreds of death claims in my life. At one point, I had several thousand clients, about 6,000 clients, and was doing about 5 to 6 death claims per month. So I happen to know a little bit about this subject and what it happens to families and so on. I know it's difficult. You don't really want to deal with the money. You don't want to deal with the clothes. You don't want to move anything around. You're going through grieving. It's a very difficult time in your life. But you have to get on track with using your money and doing the withdrawals, because another tragedy, sadly, is waiting around the corner when you pass away, another big tax bill. So we got to get those withdrawals started right away. In this case, he received his wife's RRSP, and all of a sudden, in that spring of that year, had $700,000 of RRSPs that he had to do withdrawals on. Probably wasn't thinking about withdrawals. He probably was not talking to an advisor, because it sounds to me like, well, if they had talked to an advisor and that advisor knew about planning and knew about estate planning and taxation, they would have called out that change of beneficiary right away and would have said, look, that's not going to solve the issue of taxation. That's just going to solve the 1.5% probate tax and make sure that money goes to your kids. We still need to deal with that. So it sounds to me like they may have not had an opportunity to talk to an advisor, because they would have started to aggressively melt down. Usually a 60-year-old who's not talking to an advisor isn't thinking about RRSP withdrawals. They've been conditioned to think about defer to age 71, use your tax-free savings account, start your CPP a little bit early, and then, because you don't need the RRSP money, right, is the argument. So I'll just push that off as long as I can, but then that creates a tax burden. That's why you're all talking to me and to other advisors who are doing planning to get that RRSP balance lower and lower and lower, so there isn't a tax burden on your estate. So let's talk about an actual plan. This isn't their plan. This is just a generic plan. You can see this is an individual. This is from a couple's plan. So they're 60 years of age. He's got about $560,000, and you can see there's a $309,000, $310,000 tax in the estate. So when we're doing your retirement plan, what we're being very focused on here is, okay, you've got an RRSP, we have to do a meltdown. That's that middle yellow column where we're doing all these, the minuses, and that's the withdrawals that are happening annually. We're focused on when to take your CPP and what's your tax rate, which I'm not showing. This is just too much. I don't want to have too much clutter here. But when we're moving around the start date of your CPP and varying the amounts of your RRSP withdrawal, on the far right side in that column, we can see the effect of taxation on your account. So we're immediately being able to gauge or measure, is this strategy working? And if the tax in the estate is dropping, that's a good sign. The tax is going down and down and down. If you want it to go down more aggressively, you increase the withdrawals in your RRSPs. Your tax year over year goes up, but so does the tax in your estate. It goes down. So there's it's a real balancing act of your own goals. What is your goal? Is it the amount of money that you leave behind? You want that elevated? Is it not paying a lot of tax year over year, or is it some kind of combination in between? That's what we're focused on. Now, back to the insurance question. I'm going to relate this in in a logical way. When you are going to retire, for those of you who have already retired, and you had a defined benefit pension plan, you've been presented with options, right? You may recall this. And for those who are not there yet, this is what's going to happen. So you're getting, you had this page that said, here are your options for your pension. What kind of guarantee, or if you don't even want a guarantee, but what kind of guarantee period do you want in your pension? Meaning a guarantee period is if you pass away within a certain period of time, the money's still going to go to your spouse. So that can be like a 5-year guarantee or a 10-year guarantee, or you can choose one that doesn't have a guarantee. Each one of those scenarios, you're going to be paid less or more depending on which one you choose. That is really, when you're getting paid less, you're effectively saying, I'm going to take less of a payment every year to guarantee my money goes to my beneficiaries. The difference between the less and the no guarantee, I want you to think of that as the premium that you have to pay for insurance for guaranteeing. You're not actually applying for insurance. Every time I do a video, right, there's always a loud guy going by with the car. I try my best, but bear with me here. So this idea is, it's the same principle in a defined benefit plan. When you choose your guarantee, you're effectively putting insurance into that by choosing a lesser amount to guarantee the money is going to go to your beneficiaries. So why not do that with your RSP accounts? Get a term policy. $100 a month for a 60-year-old male, healthy, would pay out $310,000. So what you're doing here is to say, then let's assume that you don't have a lot of non-registered that you could buy a whole life, but that 10-year term policy is going to have the same premium payment every single month or year for 10 years. So it's not going to go up and down on you. You're guaranteed that's how much you have to pay. So you could guarantee that money, that if you were the last surviving spouse, you could make sure that that $309,000, if you died at 60, is going to go to CRA. You can't stop that. The next year, $296, depending on how much money you take out, that's going to CRA. You can't stop it. But what you can do is replace it with the insurance that comes in as a death benefit, comes in tax-free. So there's no tax on your estate as a result of the insurance, but there's the tax still remaining on the RSP. So why don't you just insure the RSP the same way you do with a defined benefit plan? That's the way I try to approach this with clients, if you want to address that. There are some people, they don't care. They're like, you know what, I've passed away. I don't care about how much money's going to CRA at that point. A lot of parents will tell me, the kids are getting the house anyway, so that's enough money. So it's really a matter of preference in this case. Okay, so this is actually, I tried to model this couple and try to see mathematically, does it work out? 62 and 60 on the left, you can see that they have about $700,000 in RSPs. He has $700,000 in RSPs, and you see the tax bill $690. There's a cottage there. So you can see when we do these plans, we can actually model out exactly your real life and tell you, here's what we see if this event happens, this is what you're going to have to pay in tax. What is your plan to address that? Do you want a plan to address that? And then we can move forward with those kinds of plans. Okay, thanks for tuning in and staying to this video. I always have a question at the very end of your video, and that is, what's stopping you from building a retirement plan that protects both your income and your legacy? Your legacy are the assets that you leave behind after you pass away. What is stopping you from getting a plan that could prevent this kind of information or this kind of result happening in your life? It's just a phone call. It's just an email away. That's all you have to do. Again, thanks for tuning in to see this video. Put your comments below. Like and share this video with everybody you know. And I look forward to seeing you in the next video. Thanks, and be well.